The December wind whipped through the bare branches of the old oak tree outside Beth's childhood home in Millbrook, Ohio. Christmas lights twinkled on neighboring houses, but the warmth they promised felt distant as Beth stood on the front porch, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. Through the window, she could see her mother, Margaret, moving around the kitchen with the same methodical precision she'd always possessed, arranging cookies on plates, checking the turkey in the oven, everything exactly as it had been every Christmas Eve for the past 28 years. "Mom, please just listen to me," Beth pleaded as Margaret opened the door just wide enough for her voice to carry through. "This isn't some silly dream. I've spent 2 years developing this business plan. The sustainable fashion market is exploding, and I have investors interested." Margaret's face remained stern, her gray hair pulled back in its usual tight bun. She wore the same red apron she'd owned for decades, the one with tiny holly leaves embroidered around the edges. "Elizabeth, you have a perfectly good job at the bank. You have stability, benefits, a future. Why would you throw that away for some fantasy about making clothes?" "It's not a fantasy." Beth's voice cracked with frustration. "I'm not making clothes, Mom. I'm creating a sustainable fashion platform that connects ethical manufacturers with conscious consumers. Do you know how much textile waste ends up in landfills? How many factory workers are exploited in fast fashion?" Margaret's expression hardened. "And do you know how many people in this town would kill for your job? Your father worked himself to death to give you opportunities, and this is how you honor his memory. By chasing pipe dreams." The mention of her father hit Beth like a physical blow. David had been gone for 3 years now, taken by a heart attack at 55. He'd worked double shifts at the auto plant, always talking about building something better for his family. Beth felt tears threatening, but she stood straighter. "Dad would have understood," she said quietly. "He always said I should follow my passion." "Your father was a practical man," Margaret snapped. "He believed in hard work and steady paychecks, not in abandoning everything for some startup that'll probably fail within a year." Beth pulled her coat tighter against the cold. Behind her mother, she could see the Christmas tree they'd decorated together just last weekend, before Beth had finally worked up the courage to tell her mother about her plans. The ornaments they'd collected over the years told the story of their family. The handmade star from Beth's second-grade art class, the photo frame with her father's picture from their last Christmas together, the little ceramic angel her grandmother had given her. "I already gave my notice at the bank," Beth said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm moving to Columbus next week. I found a small office space, and I'm launching Green Threads in March." Margaret's face went pale, then flushed with anger. "You what? Without even discussing it with me? After everything we've been through? I'm 28 years old, Mom. I can make my own decisions. Clearly you can't. Look at you. You're about to throw away everything for a business that doesn't even exist yet. You're being selfish and irresponsible." Beth felt something snap inside her. Selfish? "I'm trying to build something meaningful. I'm trying to make a difference in the world, not just sit behind a desk counting other people's money for the rest of my life." "Don't you dare take that tone with me," Margaret said, stepping closer. "I raised you better than this. I sacrificed everything after your father died to keep this family together, and this is how you repay me? By abandoning everything we built?" "You didn't build anything, Mom. You just survived." "There's a difference." The words hung in the air between them like a challenge. Margaret's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of anger, not sadness. "Get out," she said quietly. "Mom, I didn't mean—" "Get out of my house. If you're so determined to make your own way in the world, then do it. But don't expect me to watch you destroy your life." Beth stood frozen, unable to believe what she was hearing. "It's Christmas Eve. It's Christmas Eve, and you just told me that my life's work, raising you, caring for this family, means nothing to you. So yes, get out. Come back when you're ready to be the daughter I raised." Margaret stepped back and began to close the door. Beth reached out instinctively, her hand hitting the wooden frame. "Mom, please. We can work this out. I love you." For a moment, Margaret's expression softened, and Beth saw the fear behind the anger. But then her mother's face hardened again. "I love you too, Beth, but I won't enable you to ruin your life. When you come to your senses, when you realize what you're giving up, then we'll talk." The door closed with a finality that seemed to echo in the cold night air. Beth heard the deadbolt slide into place, a sound that had always meant safety and home. Now it felt like a prison door slamming shut. She stood there for several minutes, hoping her mother would change her mind, would open the door and pull her inside where it was warm and safe. But the only sound was the wind through the trees and the distant laughter of children playing in the snow at the house next door. Finally, Beth walked back to her car, her footsteps crunching on the frozen ground. As she drove away, she could see the Christmas lights in her rearview mirror, growing smaller and smaller until they disappeared entirely. She didn't look back again. 6 months later, Beth sat in her cramped office above a coffee shop in Columbus's Short North District, surrounded by fabric samples, sketches, and empty coffee cups. The space was nothing like the sterile bank office she'd left behind. Exposed brick walls, creaky hardwood floors, and a window that looked out onto a narrow alley where local artists displayed their work on weekends. It was chaotic, imperfect, and exactly what she needed. "The manufacturers in Guatemala are interested," said Marcus Chen, her business partner and former college roommate, looking up from his laptop. "They can guarantee fair trade certification and organic cotton, but they want a minimum order of 5,000 units. Beth rubbed her temples, feeling the familiar weight of uncertainty. 5,000 units meant committing almost all of their remaining startup capital. If the line didn't sell, they'd be finished before they really began. "What does Sarah think?" she asked, referring to their marketing consultant, a former classmate who'd left her corporate job to help conscious brands tell their stories. "She's confident we can move the inventory if we launch with the right influencers. The environmental angle is really resonating with the 25 to 35 demographic." Beth nodded, but her mind wandered to the pile of unpaid bills on her desk. The office rent was due in 2 weeks, and her savings were running dangerously low. She'd been living on ramen noodles and optimism for months. Her phone buzzed with a text from her friend Jenny back in Millbrook. "Saw your mom at the grocery store today. She asked about you. I think she misses you." Beth stared at the message, feeling the familiar ache in her chest. She'd called her mother 3 times since Christmas Eve, but Margaret had let every call go to voicemail. The last message Beth had left was simple. "I love you, Mom. I hope you're okay." "You all right?" Marcus asked, noticing her distraction. "Yeah, just family stuff." Beth set the phone aside. "Let's do it. Place the order with Guatemala." Marcus grinned. "Really? We're really doing this?" "We're really doing this." Over the next few weeks, Beth threw herself into the work with an intensity that surprised even her. She spent hours on video calls with manufacturers, learning about sustainable production methods and fair labor practices. She visited organic cotton farms in nearby states, documenting the entire supply chain to ensure transparency. She worked with local designers to create patterns that were both stylish and timeless, pieces that people would want to wear for years, rather than discard after one season. The first shipment arrived on a sweltering July morning. Beth, Marcus, and Sarah spent the entire day unpacking boxes, checking quality, and photographing products for the website. The clothes were beautiful, soft organic cotton basics in earth tones, each piece accompanied by a card telling the story of the artisan who made it. "This is incredible," Sarah said, holding up a cream-colored sweater. "The quality is amazing. You can feel the difference." Beth smiled, but she was already thinking about the next challenge. They had the products, but they needed customers. The website was beautiful, but it was just sitting there in the vast digital ocean, waiting to be discovered. "We need to get people talking," she said. "Not just about the clothes, but about why this matters." That evening, Beth sat in her small apartment, drafting a blog post about the true cost of fast fashion. She wrote about the factory workers in Bangladesh, who made clothes for pennies, about the mountains of textile waste in African countries, about the environmental impact of an industry that encouraged constant consumption. But she also wrote about hope, about the small changes that could make a big difference, about the power of conscious choices. She posted the article on LinkedIn, expecting maybe a few likes from friends. Instead, it took off. Shares, comments, messages from people who had never thought about where their clothes came from. A journalist from a sustainable living magazine reached out, wanting to feature green threads in an upcoming article about ethical fashion startups. The orders started trickling in. 5 here, 10 there. Beth personally packed each shipment, including a handwritten note thanking the customer for choosing to support sustainable fashion. She started a social media campaign featuring real customers wearing their Green Threads pieces, sharing their own stories about making more conscious choices. By September, they had sold out of their initial inventory and were preparing to place a second order. Beth felt a cautious optimism growing in her chest. They weren't profitable yet, but they were building something real. One evening, as she was closing up the office, her phone rang. For a moment, her heart leaped. Maybe it was her mother, finally ready to talk. But the caller ID showed her Aunt Linda, her mother's sister. "Beth, honey, I hope you don't mind me calling," Linda said. "I got your number from Jenny. I wanted you to know that I think what you're doing is wonderful. I ordered one of your dresses last week, and it's absolutely beautiful." Beth felt tears stinging her eyes. "Thank you, Aunt Linda. That means the world to me." "Your mother," Linda paused. "She's struggling, Beth. She's proud of you, even if she can't admit it. She keeps that magazine article about your company on her kitchen table." Beth's breath caught. "She does. She's scared of losing you, scared of change. But I think she's starting to understand that you're not going anywhere. You're building something beautiful." After the call ended, Beth sat in her car for a long time, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. She thought about her father, about the dreams he'd had for his family. She thought about her mother, alone in that house with all its memories. She pulled out her phone and typed a text. "Mom, I love you. I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready to talk, I'll be here." She hit send and drove home, feeling something shift inside her chest. Hope, maybe. Or just the quiet certainty that she was exactly where she needed to be. The first snow of the season was falling outside Beth's office window when the call came. It was November, and Green Threads had been featured in 3 major magazines, but they were still struggling to reach the mainstream market. Beth was reviewing quarterly numbers when her phone rang. "Beth, this is Amanda Rodriguez from Good Morning America. I'm a producer for our lifestyle segment, and we're doing a feature on sustainable fashion for the holidays. Your story caught our attention." Beth nearly dropped her coffee. "Good Morning America? We'd love to have you on the show next week. Can you be in New York on Tuesday?" After hanging up, Beth stared at her phone in disbelief. Marcus walked in carrying lunch, took one look at her face, and stopped. "What happened?" "You look like you've seen a ghost. Good Morning America wants me on the show." Marcus dropped the bag of sandwiches. "Are you serious?" The next week flew by in a whirlwind of preparation. Beth worked with Sarah to create a media kit, practiced interview questions, and selected pieces from their latest collection to bring to the studio. She barely slept the night before, running through talking points and trying to calm her nerves. The green room at the ABC studios was smaller than she'd expected, filled with other guests nursing coffee and checking their phones. Beth smoothed down her Green Threads blazer, a piece from their professional line that had launched the month before, and tried to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. "You're going to do great," said the producer, a young woman with a clipboard and an encouraging smile. "Robin is really passionate about environmental issues. She's going to love what you're doing." When Beth walked onto the set, the bright lights and cameras were overwhelming. But Robin Roberts had such a warm presence that Beth found herself relaxing almost immediately. "So, Beth, tell us about Green Threads," Robin said after the cameras started rolling. "What made you leave a stable job to start a sustainable fashion company?" Beth took a breath and thought about all the stories she'd collected over the past year. The artisan in Guatemala who could now send her daughter to school, the customers who wrote to thank her for helping them make more conscious choices, the small but growing community of people who believed fashion could be a force for good. "I realize that every time we get dressed, we're making a choice," Beth said. "We can choose to support an industry that exploits workers and damages the environment, or we can choose to support something better. Green Threads exists to make that second choice easier." Robin nodded. "And you're not just talking about the environmental impact. You're also focused on fair labor practices." "Absolutely. We work directly with manufacturers who pay living wages and provide safe working conditions. Every piece comes with a story. You know exactly who made your clothes and how they were made." "That's incredible. Now I understand this decision wasn't easy for you personally." Beth felt her throat tighten. "No, it wasn't. My mother, she wanted me to keep my job at the bank. She thought I was being irresponsible." We haven't spoken since Christmas Eve. Robin's expression softened. That must be incredibly difficult. It is. But I had to follow my conviction. Sometimes you have to risk everything to build something meaningful. The interview continued for another few minutes, with Beth explaining their business model and showing some of their latest pieces. When it was over, Robin shook her hand warmly. "You're doing something really important," she said. "I hope your mother sees this." Beth smiled, though her eyes were misty. "Me too." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Their website crashed from traffic within an hour of the segment airing. Beth's phone exploded with messages from customers, investors, and reporters. Orders poured in faster than they could process them. "We need to hire more people," Marcus said, staring at his laptop screen in amazement. "We need a bigger office. We need everything." But Beth was thinking about something else. She pulled out her phone and saw 17 missed calls from Jenny, her friend in Millbrook. "Oh my God, Beth, did you see?" Jenny's voice was breathless when Beth called her back. "Your mom watched the whole thing. She was crying. I mean, really crying. She told Mrs. Henderson next door that she's never been prouder of anyone in her life." Beth felt her knees go weak. "Really? Really? She said she's been wrong about everything. She wants to call you, but she's scared you won't forgive her." That evening, Beth sat in her apartment, staring at her phone. The rational part of her mind was spinning with all the business implications of the morning's success. They needed to scale up production, hire a fulfillment team, maybe even look for a bigger investor. But all she could think about was her mother, sitting alone in that house in Millbrook, watching her daughter on television. She picked up her phone and dialed the number she knew by heart. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered, tentative and hopeful. "Beth? Hi, Mom." There was a long pause, filled with months of hurt and love and stubborn pride. "I saw you on television," Margaret said finally. You looked so professional, so confident. I was terrified." Margaret laughed, a sound Beth had missed more than she realized. "You didn't look it. You looked like someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I'm still figuring it out as I go. Aren't we all?" Another pause. "Beth, I owe you an apology, a big one." "Mom, no. Let me say this. I was so scared of losing you, of watching you fail, that I couldn't see what you were actually building. But watching you today, hearing you talk about your work, I realized I didn't lose you. I wasn't looking in the right place." Beth felt tears running down her cheeks. "I missed you so much. I missed you too, baby. I'm so sorry. I'm so proud of you." They talked for 2 hours, about the business, about the loneliness they'd both felt, about the future. When Beth finally hung up, she felt lighter than she had in months. She looked out her window at the city lights, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, scaling the business, managing growth, staying true to their mission as they expanded. But tonight, for the first time in almost a year, she felt complete. Her phone buzzed with one last message from her mother. "Come home for Christmas. I'll make your favorite cookies." Beth smiled and typed back, "I'll be there." Christmas Eve morning dawned crisp and clear in Millbrook. Beth pulled into her mother's driveway at 10 a.m., her rental car packed with gifts and a nervous energy she hadn't felt in months. The house looked exactly the same. The same white shutters, the same holly wreath on the front door, the same warm glow from the living room windows. But everything was different now. Margaret opened the door before Beth could knock, and for a moment they just looked at each other. Her mother seemed smaller somehow, more fragile, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Hi, Mom. Hi, baby." They fell into each other's arms, and Beth felt like she was coming home for the first time in a year. Margaret smelled like vanilla and cinnamon, just like she always had during the holidays. "I made your favorite cookies," Margaret said, pulling back to look at her daughter. "And I may have bought every magazine that mentioned your company. The grocery store clerk thinks I'm obsessed with fashion now." Beth laughed, feeling some of the tension in her chest release. "You kind of are obsessed with fashion now. Did you see the order we got from Sarah Johnson? She bought 3 dresses. Sarah Johnson from high school, the one who used to make fun of your science project presentations, the very same. Turns out she's really into sustainable living now." They spent the morning catching up properly, filling in the gaps that phone calls and text messages couldn't bridge. Margaret had kept every article about Green Threads, had even visited their website multiple times, though she'd been too proud to place an order. "I wanted to support you," she admitted. "But I was afraid you'd think I was just trying to buy my way back into your life. Mom, you never left my life. Even when we weren't talking, you were always there." Margaret showed Beth the scrapbook she'd been keeping. Every mention of Green Threads, every photo from their social media, every milestone carefully documented. It was the same attention to detail she'd always brought to Beth's childhood achievements, but now applied to something she was finally beginning to understand. "I read about the factory workers," Margaret said quietly. "The ones in Guatemala who make your clothes. There was this article about how your company helped send a girl to college." Beth nodded. "Maria. She's studying engineering. Her mother, Carmen, is one of our best seamstresses. I never thought about where my clothes came from," Margaret continued. "I just went to the store and bought whatever was cheapest. But after reading all this, I can't do that anymore." They were interrupted by a knock at the door. Beth looked up to see familiar faces through the window. Jenny, her husband Mike, and their 2 kids, along with several other neighbors and friends from high school. "Surprise!" Jenny called out as Margaret opened the door. "We're having an impromptu Green Threads trunk show." Beth stared in amazement as her childhood friends filed into the living room, many of them wearing pieces from her collections. Sarah Johnson was there in one of their organic cotton dresses, looking genuinely excited to see Beth. Mrs. Henderson from next door had on a Green Threads cardigan that looked beautiful with her silver hair. "How did you all—" "Your mom organized it," Jenny explained. "She reached out to everyone, told us about your company, and we all wanted to support you. Plus, we're all dying to hear about your success." Margaret beamed with pride. "I may have done a little shopping myself." She disappeared into the kitchen and returned wearing a forest green Green Threads blouse that complemented her eyes perfectly. "Mom, you look amazing. I feel amazing. This is the most comfortable shirt I've ever owned." The afternoon flew by in a blur of conversation, laughter, and impromptu fashion show moments. Beth found herself telling stories about building the business, about the artisans they worked with, about the customers who had become part of their community. She was amazed by how genuinely interested everyone was, how many thoughtful questions they asked about sustainability and ethical production. "You know what I love most about this?" said Tom Chen, Marcus's father, who had driven down from Cleveland. "It's not just about the clothes. It's about the story. You're helping people connect with something bigger than themselves." As the sun began to set, the guests gradually departed, leaving Beth and Margaret alone again. They sat in the living room, the Christmas tree lights casting a warm glow over the familiar space. "I'm sorry, I didn't understand before," Margaret said quietly. "I was so focused on the risks that I couldn't see the purpose." "You were protecting me the only way you knew how," Beth replied. "Dad always said you were the strongest person he knew." Margaret smiled. "He would have been so proud of you. He always said you were going to change the world somehow." "I'm not changing the world, Mom. I'm just trying to make it a little better." "That's exactly what changing the world looks like, Beth. One choice at a time." They talked late into the night, about business plans and family memories, about the future and the past. Beth felt the last of the walls between them crumble away, replaced by something stronger, mutual respect, understanding, and a love that had never really wavered. On Christmas morning, they exchanged gifts in the same living room where Beth had opened presents as a child. Margaret had framed the magazine cover featuring Green Threads, along with a photo of Beth from the Good Morning America interview. "For your office," she said. "So you remember where you came from." Beth's gift to her mother was a custom Green Threads piece, a soft blue sweater with a subtle pattern that had been inspired by the wallpaper in Beth's childhood bedroom. "I had Carmen make it specially for you," Beth explained. "She said she wanted to make something for the mother of the woman who changed her daughter's life." Margaret held the sweater close, tears in her eyes. "I love it. I love everything about what you've built." Later that afternoon, as they prepared Christmas dinner together, Beth's phone rang. It was Marcus, calling from his own family gathering in California. "How's it going?" he asked, Beth said, watching her mother hum while she seasoned the turkey. "Actually, perfect. Good, because I have news. Remember that investor meeting we have scheduled for January? Well, it turns out we might not need it." We got a call from a major retail chain. They want to carry green threads in 50 stores nationwide. Beth nearly dropped her phone. Are you serious? Dead serious. And that's not all. CNN wants to do a feature on ethical fashion, and they want to profile us as the lead story. Beth felt dizzy with excitement and possibility. This is incredible. This is everything we dreamed about. I know. And Beth, I'm proud of you. Not just for the business stuff, but for taking the risk, for following your conviction even when it was hard. After hanging up, Beth stood in the kitchen, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was happening. A year ago, she'd been sitting behind a desk at the bank, dreaming of something more. Now she was building something that mattered, something that was growing beyond her wildest expectations. Good news? Margaret asked, noticing her expression. Really good news. We're going to be in major stores. CNN wants to do a story. It's all happening so fast. Margaret smiled. Success usually does once you stop being afraid of it. That evening, as they sat down to dinner, Beth felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the business success, but for this moment. Sitting at the same table where she'd eaten thousands of meals, but seeing everything with new eyes. Mom, thank you, she said as they raised their glasses of wine. For what? For letting me find my own way. For loving me even when you didn't understand. For teaching me that family isn't just about agreeing with each other. It's about supporting each other's dreams. Margaret reached across the table and took her daughter's hand. Thank you for showing me that sometimes the scariest risks lead to the most beautiful destinations. Outside, snow began to fall again, covering the quiet streets of Millbrook in a blanket of white. Inside, mother and daughter sat together, planning the future and honoring the past, surrounded by the warmth of reconciliation and the promise of tomorrow. Beth looked around the room, at the Christmas tree with its familiar ornaments, at her mother's face glowing with pride, at the magazine article about green thread sitting on the side table, and realized that this was what success really looked like. Not just the numbers or the recognition, but the ability to build something meaningful while staying true to the people who mattered most. She had found her way home, and she had brought her dreams with her.